So I know that there are some progressives out there who will say that the Russia investigation into Trump isn't a big deal, and I'm not one of those progressives. I think that it is a really big story that warrants attention. While I think that, yes, Democrats are using Russia as an excuse for why Hillary Clinton lost, and while I think that the election meddling aspect is way flimsier than the money laundering or potential money laundering aspect, which is where Trump could be in huge trouble, I still think it's a big story. Trump couldn't get loans in the United States, so he went abroad. He got cash from places like Deutsche Bank, which has been caught money laundering for the Russians. So it is a big story. But I don't talk about that story on TYT Politics really because I think that the mainstream media has got it covered, and I mean covered. I'm sure that almost every time you turn on cable news, that is the focus of the discussion, or any kind of news at all. An Intercept report studied all of the episodes of Rachel Maddow's show for 6 weeks, and they found that Russia-focused segments accounted for 53% of those broadcasts, Aaron Mate writes for The Intercept. Maddow's Russia coverage has dwarfed the time devoted to other top issues, including Trump's escalating crackdown on undocumented immigrants at 1.3% of her coverage, Obamacare repeal, 3.8% of her coverage, the legal battle over Trump's Muslim ban, 5.6%, a surge of anti-GOP activism and town halls since Trump took office, 5.8%, and Trump's administration scandals and stumbles, 11%. This study was done in early 2017. A reminder that Maddow was once the most progressive voice on cable news, truly, but Russia segments conservatively made up for a higher percentage of her broadcasts in that period than all of the rest of the topics combined. That's unbelievable. This was a case study in some of the Russia obsession of the media, and that's really the best that can be done when studying cable news, since they have 24-hour news coverage, they're constantly talking, and there's just so much data to analyze and compile. But there is one outlet that studies every nightly newscast on the major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that's the Tyndall Report, which we're going to discuss today. They were able to be extremely comprehensive. They do this every year and get hard data on those networks. So here are the top 20 topics that NBC, CBS, and ABC nightly broadcasts discussed in 2017. Based on what I just said, you won't be surprised by number one. Number one, Russia election meddling probe, 677 mentions. Obamacare repeal replaced debate, 444 times. North Korea nuclear program, 300 times. Hurricane Harvey hits Texas, 272 times. FBI Director James Comey fired, 241 times. Hurricane Irma hits the U.S. Virgin Islands and Florida 216 times. Las Vegas concert massacre. Then wildfires in California. Hurricane Maria hits Puerto Rico. NSC's Michael Flynn ousted. Tax cut legislation passes. Then travel ban and visa restrictions. That was discussed at length. Winter weather coming in after that. Syrian civil war 160 times. The 2017 Senate race, specifically focused on Alabama, 144 times. Illegal immigration crackdown 134 times. The Trump presidency progress 131 times. Then the Trump wiretapping claim. Then Russia-U.S. diplomacy frictions. And lastly, drugs, heroin, opioids abuse. But you may have noticed that while the general Russia election meddling is the top focus, there are lots of Russia-related topics that make it into that top 20 as well, including, James Comey's firing, the number 5 most discussed topic, Michael Flynn's firing at number 10, Trump Towers wiretapping at 18, U.S.-Russia relations at 19, the firings, that's the drama, so they got to cover that. Now, network news nightly broadcasts aren't even, nearly as bad as cable news broadcasts. They are a finite amount of time, and they are infinitely more well-rounded than that of cable, which is just infotainment. Cable news wants it to be a reality show, so that's why the Russia investigation is the big moneymaker for them. The president is under investigation, but even in the higher standard, in my opinion, of cable or of network news, Russia-related coverage makes up, by my rough math, about 31% of the top 20 topics covered. Does this topic match up with the concerns of the American people? Not really. In the heart of when this was studied, June 2017, Gallup found that the top concerns of the American people were as follows. Dissatisfaction with government and poor leadership, 25%. Terrorism, 8%. Healthcare and insurance, 7%. It was at 18% the month before when the debate was going on. Economy in general, 6%. Unemployment and jobs, 6%, race relations and racism at 6% as well, unifying the country at 6%, illegal immigration at 4%. So I guess an argument could be made that the Russia investigation could make up some of that 25% that are, dissatisfied with the government, but I think that's a really big stretch. Besides a general dissatisfaction with leadership, those are policy concerns that follow that were barely addressed in the above list. Illegal immigration was discussed, terrorism of course as well, because they're scary, but healthcare and insurance was only discussed in the context of the Obamacare repeal, which is, horse race stuff. Was there any productive conversation about universal coverage or Medicare for all? That is literally the third largest concern of the American people, and it was higher the month before. They can get a pass on that, I guess, since the Obamacare repeal was the number 3 topic, but I don't see anything on there about racism or the economy or unemployment, which are the major concerns listed there. How about some more recent numbers? The American public in the Gallup poll in the past few days have said that this should be the top priority for Congress in 2018. Terrorism at number 1, 73%. Education, then the economy, then healthcare costs, Social Security, Medicare, the environment, jobs, the poor and needy, reducing crime, and race relations is right below that at number 11. Those sound pretty progressive to me, besides the terrorism. Now, some people may argue that it isn't the job of the mainstream media to line up its coverage with the American people's concerns and their priorities. I would strongly disagree with that sentiment. The role of the free press is to be a representative for the people and the challenging of the political elite and of the powerful. Now, it is true that the American people are growing in their disgust for Trump, and around 50% believe that he colluded with the Russians or tried to collude with them. So it is a concern, but it is not a top concern. It is not a policy concern. It's certainly not a priority as found by Gallup. It doesn't affect the everyday lives of Americans, and it doesn't have anything to do with, their paycheck or their mortgage or feeding their family. It has nothing to do with that. The mainstream media focuses on the Russia investigation this heavily for 2 reasons, in my opinion. 1, it's a reality show with a cast of idiotic characters who could play a role in the president's demise, and they're colorful, all that. It's entertainment, nothing more. And, it's good for business because sometimes people like that reality show. They want to tune in. And 2, because it allows them to skirt their responsibility as ones who challenge politicians. No, I don't think it's some big conspiracy where they've all decided, let's talk about Russia only so we don't have to discuss those issues. No, I don't think it's that. But the mainstream press, in their bones, do not want to be called biased. That is their worst nightmare. Ever since the liberal media talking point, that's pervaded our culture since Reagan, since the 80s, the mainstream press and largely TV news has been terrified of being called biased. So what do? Horse race, investigations, drama, scandal, personalities, surface. Because if you dig a little deeper on the issues, the facts have a bit of a liberal bias. Unfortunately, I think that their fear and their cowardice of that has consequences. It results in a less informed populace, one that will also, unfortunately, call things even when they don't need to be. The American people's top priorities include, yes, terrorism, but also education, the economy, Social Security, and Medicare. All of those have an immensely progressive tilt. And if the media spent a fraction of their Russia time on those actual issues, we might have a different Congress and a different White House. But, alas, they have beat the Russia story to death instead.